Introduction to why bonding is crucial in an interview. Let's take a step back now, okay? Let's take a step back for a bit and discuss the personal aspects of doing really well in interviews, okay? So by the end of the section, you're going to understand what it means to be personable in an interview. Why? Because people like hiring people they like, okay? How? Well, the first 10 minutes or so of every interview you go through, it shouldn't be about business, ever, okay? And I'll explain this in more detail in this section. Let's talk about the strategy for the first 5 or 10 minutes or so of every interview you have, okay? Especially if you've never met this person before. Find something in common with this person, okay? Maybe there's a sports team, right? Maybe you visited the same place. Talk about the news that morning, okay? Or the weather or whatever it is. And what I love to do, I'm so passionate about baseball. I love the sport, right? I love it. And whenever I meet somebody, I'm from Toronto Blue Jays, great team. But when I meet somebody from another city, I'll immediately talk about that sports team. So I meet people from Baltimore every now and then. And I always say, oh, cool, are you an Orioles fan? And if they are, I'll talk about Cal Ripken, who's a person I really respect. If you're from San Diego, I'll talk about the late great Tony Gwynn, Jeter, if you're from New York, etc. Just find something you're passionate about that you love, right? And it'll come through. They'll see you love it, right? And so politicians win usually not based on the content, but the way that they speak and the way they connect with people, okay? And by being usually pretty friendly and affable, and I'm not going to mention which ones, whatever, but you can go back in history, even if you go back to 1960 and you watch the first televised debate between Richard Nixon and JFK, Kennedy. You can see Kennedy was more friendly. Nixon was a little bit more sinister, whatever. So just quite often people that win elections are the ones that are just the more friendly, the person you can have a beverage with, that sort of thing, okay? So don't be robotic either. Just smile, have a conversation. I want you to pretend actually in this interview, it's not an interview. It's a meeting with your aunt, you say aunt or aunt? Aunt? With your aunt or uncle that you haven't seen in a long, long time. Okay, and I want you to enjoy the meeting and just tell yourself 3 things. I'm going to meet people and have fun and learn by the end of this interview process, okay? Can you pass the O'Hare test? What does this mean? Well, Chicago's O'Hare Airport is one of the biggest and busiest airports in the world. And the namesake of the O'Hare test is it's basically a personality test that you really have to pass in order to get hired, or if you want to get promoted and be a great salesperson. And so I created 4 test questions that you have to pass, okay, in order to win a deal or get a job, okay? And this will help you take your career to the next level. Let me explain, okay? So what is the O'Hare test and why does it matter? So the O'Hare test is basically this. If you're stranded in an airport for 8 hours in between flights with a colleague, right, somebody you work with, can they tolerate you and do they enjoy your company? It's more important than what you know. So when we're interviewing for a job or we're trying to get a deal or close a deal in sales, we often forget that in business, relationships are more important, always more important than product knowledge, okay? So here's 4 questions you got to ask yourself before getting a job or closing a sale about the potential colleague of yours or business partner, okay? The first one is this. Do they enjoy your company? Okay. There's a good chance that you're going to be spending much more time with this person than your own family. Think about that. As such, you really have to kind of make sure that they really enjoy hanging out with you. So what's the point of working if you deal with people that you just don't enjoy hanging out with, right? Years ago, I was having a lot of issues closing customers. I was frustrated because after every failed, sales call, I kept working harder and harder and harder, but I kept failing. I don't know why. I knew more about the product I was selling than anybody. I worked really hard, but I was a failure. So at that point in my life, I was reading a lot and trying to figuring things out. And I just finished reading a book called Sun Tzu and the Art of War. And I remember a passage that every battle is won before it's been fought, and I'll say it again and again and again. So I kept working harder and harder and harder, and I kept failing. Okay, and I didn't know what to do. I was so frustrated. You know, I said screw it, and I started going to meetings and just not caring as much. I just didn't care as much, and something amazing happened, which was I started closing every single deal. I thought, wait a second. If I don't care, does that mean I'm going to do better in business? No. It made me less uptight. Okay. I thought, well, maybe I was trying too hard before. No, it was because I was just, being myself, right? When I said I didn't care, instead of trying to be the perfect, sales robot person, right? So I started having a lot of fun getting to know my customers. And this is when I first thought of the O'Hare test. So people want to spend time and work with people that they like and they enjoy spending time with, right? Work has to be fun or forget it. What's the point? So by the way, you need to feel the same way about this person or these people you're interviewing with. Okay, so when you're being interviewed, keep in mind you're also interviewing them. Question number 2 in the O'Hare test. Do they spend more time talking than you do? They have to, okay? I read a book by a brilliant man named Dale Carnegie, right? It's called How to Win Friends and How to Influence People. Kind of an odd name, but it's actually the best business book on relationships that's ever been written, in my humble opinion. And so Dale Carnegie, he said that people love talking about themselves. And I love hearing, life stories of people. It's interesting because everybody has a different path, especially if somebody's a lot older. I used to love, and I still love, when I meet somebody older, if they served in World War II or they were around, I just love hearing stories about, what life was like then or that sort of thing, right? It's empowering to me, and it makes me feel very blessed that we all live in the world we live in. Whatever, I'm not going there. So it's interesting. Everyone's got a different path, okay? Everybody has a different path. And by the way, if you get really nervous presenting, right, then I want you to run to your fear. I want to throw you in the deep end of the pool. And what I did when I was younger, I was terrified of presenting, and I was a little bit shy and reserved, and I was a programmer and a little bit antisocial at one point. And for you programmers, you know what I'm talking about. When you're coding and it's you and the machine and you're coding for hours and hours and hours, you're not as social. Here's what I did. I ran to my fear. I took a course offered by Dale Carnegie, right? And just search on the web, Dale Carnegie. These courses are offered in every major city in the world. And it'll tell you how to do public speaking and come out of your shell, that sort of thing, okay? And if that helps you do better in interviews, please take it. Okay, so I love this quote from Larry King. Larry King was a great interviewer, right? He still is. He said this: I remind myself every morning, nothing I say this day will teach me anything. So I'm going to learn, and if I'm going to learn, I must do so by listening. I love that. I love that. The best business people are superb listeners. Question number 3. Do they enjoy answering your questions and telling you their life story? So when you're in a job interview or a meeting with a potential customer, again, you're interviewing them as well, okay? And ask them about their life story. Make sure that their core values are similar to yours, or that you respect and appreciate their core values. You are interviewing them, remember, okay? I've learned to really enjoy hearing stories about the lives of my clients and prospective customers and people interviewing me. I love hearing stories, right? I love learning about people, okay? So they're so much more likable once you get to know their awesome stories. Maybe even they think the same of you or of me when they learn our stories. Number 4. Do they trust you and you trust them? Okay. It's always important to disclose all material risks or potential issues you might have, or your product might have, or the service you're selling, right, before conducting business. Transparency builds trust. Once you really get to know people from a personal level, an incredible amount of trust, goodwill, and bonding develops. Okay. So if the answer to the 4 questions in this section are yes, then congratulations. You just passed the O'Hare test. Okay, so when you interview at a company or meet with potential customers or conduct an informational interview. The first 10 minutes or so of the initial meeting should be conducted like it is the O'Hare test. Now, someone's first impression of you will likely never change, right? I know it's a cliche. They say you never get a second chance to make a first impression. But once you pass the O'Hare test and earn their respect and admiration and trust, and once you complete this course, then the rest of interviewing will be really, really easy. So, have you ever studied so hard for an exam that you got to the point where you thought, I'm so ready. In fact, I can't wait to write this test. Okay. You're going to enjoy interviewing by the end of this course. Okay. So open up, be personable, and be a real person in the interviews and not a robot. I want you to be you, meaning you be personable, be yourself, right? If they can't accept you for who you are, then it might not be fun for you to work there. Okay. And once you do that, then your content and your delivery will actually be a lot better and enjoyable for the interviewer. So I'm a big fan of Bruce Springsteen, and there's a reason I bring this up. If you get a chance, go to YouTube and do a search on The River by Bruce Springsteen. He really opens up about his life, and you can really identify with him. I'm getting shivers just now thinking of this song, right? And so just be personable. People love it when you're personable, when you're real. When you're humble and you talk about your failures as well, right? There's a tactful way to do it. So think of an interview like a date, right? You'll do well on the date and even maybe get a second date or a second interview if you're you and you're not robotic, right? Just don't be robotic. Just don't be too rehearsed. You can prepare, but don't sound rehearsed, okay? Interview from your heart first and then from your head, okay? If this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Okay. And if you do that, if you interview from your heart first and then your head, your interviewer will really know that you're interviewing for your passion and not a job. Enjoy and really look forward to your interviews, and you will be unstoppable.